Lights, camera, action in Los Angeles today. Lakers introducing JJ Redick as their new head coach here in just a little bit. It's the first coaching job for the former lottery pick. Spent 15 years in the NBA. Now Redick, who turns 40 today. Happy birthday, JJ. Tasked with improving a Lakers team that has been eliminated in the playoffs by the Nuggets in back-to-back seasons. Someone who has watched that and witnessed it himself is Dave McMenamin, who's joining us now here on SportsCenter. And Dave, what has been the reaction from players and others inside the organization following this hire now that we've had some time to let it sink in?
Well, I can start with one player, Austin Reeves, who, like LeBron James, had some podcast experience with JJ Redick. He was a guest on The Old Man and the Three, his podcast, and he was having a camp down south this past week, and he called JJ Redick a basketball genius. And he said that JJ's already reached out to him to try to establish more of a rapport heading to try to hit the ground running, because clearly Austin Reeves is one of the most important players on that roster. I spoke to someone else within the organization, and obviously JJ's coming into this job with no experience, but the person in the organization told me, the thing that he loved about his initial conversation with JJ, he's not also coming in set in his ways. He doesn't necessarily have bad habits picked up from other organizations. And so he feels like JJ will be a willing collaborator when it comes to sharing information and really getting the best out of this organization from the coaching level and taking all the resources available to him from the other outlets in the Lakers.
Okay. Usually when you have a rookie head coach, Dave, you know this, in any sport, they go to look to find veteran coaches to add to their staff. We've heard now multiple former head coaches might be added to his staff and JJ Redick's. What more can you tell us about how his staff is coming along thus far?
Yeah, building out these assistants will be almost as important as selecting JJ as the 29th coach in Lakers history. And one name that I've heard that the Lakers have some interest in potentially bringing in is Scott Brooks. Obviously, he led the OKC Thunder to a finals appearance back in the day. He was also a head coach with the Washington Wizards and was coming off a stint with the Portland Trail Blazers on Chauncey Billups' staff. He's someone who certainly will be able to provide kind of the game maintenance aspect to JJ. JJ has the X's and O's. He has the rapport with one of the most important players, if not the most important player in LeBron James. But Scott Brooks can say things like, when we traveled to this city, we like to stay in this hotel because it's close to this gym where we get a shoot around in. Those type of kind of day-to-day organization things will be very valuable in making JJ feel as comfortable as possible so he can go with his instincts when it comes to X's and O's.
And that makes sense. Scott Brooks worked for 6 NBA teams while he's been in the association. So, of course, he has some experience dealing with the day-to-day. So, of course, he would be some assistance. We'll be following Dave McMenamin for all the updates on LA's coaching staff. Thank you, Dave. And so, CJ, I want to get your perspective on this situation from a player's perspective, if you will. We know the relationship that JJ has with LeBron James. How does that affect the locker room?
I think it affects it in a positive way. You look at their history, obviously having the podcast, being able to kind of do some of those mock interviews behind the scenes in front of the public eye, understanding LeBron's history, arguably one of the greatest players of all time. The team's going to follow his league. They're going to follow Anthony Davis' league. And the fact that they have a rapport will be beneficial to this organization. And I think they'll get buy-in from all the players. You've seen Austin Reeves talk about how smart and brilliant JJ is from a basketball perspective. Obviously, he's never coached, but he understands the importance of preparation, being ready, and holding your players accountable. And I think that's something that he's going to look forward to doing and something that's going to be particularly challenging in the beginning of his tenure with the Lakers.
Okay, well, we will see how that all turns out. Speaking of new head coaches, move to another one because the Cavaliers are hiring Kenny Atkinson to be their new head coach. Sources told our Adrian Wojnarowski, of course. An assistant in Golden State for the past 3 years, Atkinson was head coach of the Nets from 2016 to 2020, overseeing the team's rebuild and eventual signings of Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving. Now that the Cavs have their new head coach, CJ, their next step will be trying to reach an extension with all-star guard Donovan Mitchell. And so the question is, should Spida actually stay in Cleveland or explore maybe what his future could look like with other teams in the league?
I think as a player, you always do what's best for your family. You look at the situation, you look at comfort, you obviously look at the finances, you look at the roster. How is the team going to continue to get better? How are they going to utilize you? I'm sure Don had a say or was involved in the process of hiring Kenny Atkinson, and I'm sure that he's going to kind of figure out what he feels is best. But based on how he was utilized last year and in the year prior, Don's had a lot of success. He averaged about 28 points per game, 6 assists, 5 rebounds. He was great in the playoffs. He scores at will. And they have a really good team. They just faced some injuries last year that kind of affected them in the playoffs. But I think this is a guy who's a perennial all-star. He's good in any market, and I think that he's going to explore his options, but ultimately do what he feels is best for himself and his family.
Yeah, and when you hire a guy like Kenny Atkinson, obviously he's good with player development, but also he's good for these veteran guys too, and can hopefully everyone gel and maybe fix the things that are in his control, not necessarily the injuries, but the other things. CJ McCollum, thank you so much for the time. We appreciate it.
I'm on fire.